I used to think silence meant nothing, just the space between words. But lately, around her, silence feels like something I have to hold carefully, like it could shatter if I breathe too loud. It started 3 months ago, when I took a part-time job at a small repair shop tucked behind the main street, a place that smelled of solder, metal dust, and burnt coffee. I was 24, broke, and trying not to look like it. She walked in one Thursday morning holding a broken vintage radio, like it was a piece of her life. I didn't notice her age first. I noticed the way she looked at things, slowly, as if the world owed her no rush. "Can you fix this?" she asked. Her voice was calm, low, but there was a faint tremor, the kind you hear only when someone's carrying too much for too long. "It depends," I said, trying to sound like I knew what I was doing. "Does it still make noise?" That made her laugh, not a bright laugh, more like something reluctant that escaped before she could stop it. "It hums," she said, "but doesn't play." I told her to leave it. I'd take a look. She hesitated, fingers tracing the dial, then nodded and placed it on the counter. When she turned to leave, I caught the faint scent of something expensive but worn, like perfume that had lived on her coat for years. Her name was Elena. She came back a week later, then again the week after that, always with some small thing that needed fixing, a watch, a lamp, a clock that only worked when it shouldn't. At first, I thought she just liked the things I repaired. Later, I realized she liked the act of repair itself, watching something broken work again, even for a little while. Maybe it reminded her that some things could still be fixed. She always came late in the day, when the shop was quiet. I'd be wiping my hands on an old rag, pretending not to notice how carefully she looked at me before she spoke. She never asked personal questions, but every answer I gave her somehow turned into one. "You're here late again," she said once, standing by the counter while rain tapped against the window. "Yeah, boss doesn't like leaving things half done." "Good habit," she said. "Though sometimes half done is better than done wrong." I didn't know if she was talking about the radio or herself. There was a day, late evening, sky turning violet, when the power went out. The shop lights flickered, then died. For a second, all we had was the faint glow from the street outside and the sound of rain growing heavier. She didn't move. Neither did I. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, but her breath caught a little before she said it. I found a flashlight, switched it on, and the beam landed on her face, her eyes reflecting it like glass. She looked older than she let herself be in daylight. Beautiful in a way that wasn't trying to be. "You shouldn't look at people like that," she said softly. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to understand them." I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. We stood there, her in the pale beam, me holding it too long. The light trembled a little because my hand did. Then the power came back, humming through the walls. She blinked and looked away first. "Let me know when it's ready," she said, voice steady again. She reached for her bag, but before leaving, she placed her hand briefly on the counter, close to mine, not touching, just close enough that I could feel the air move between us. That night, I stayed long after closing. The radio sat open on the table, wires exposed, like a body mid-surgery. I wasn't fixing it anymore. I was just listening to the faint hum inside it. It reminded me of the sound she made when she laughed, quiet, reluctant, almost ashamed of itself. And for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about that small space between our hands, the distance she left there, like an invitation I hadn't yet earned. The next time she came in, it was raining again, not the kind of rain that made you rush, but the kind that soaked into everything slowly, like it had nowhere else to be. The shop was half-lit, a single bulb flickering above the workbench. I was hunched over a clock she'd brought a few days before, its hands refusing to move past 12. When the door chimed, I didn't have to look up. "You're early this time," I said. "Or you're late," she replied. Her tone was dry, but softer than usual, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to joke or stay serious. Elena stepped inside, brushing the rain from her sleeve. Her hair was damp, curling slightly around her face. She wore a beige coat, too thin for the weather, and carried a box wrapped in a towel. "It's my father's camera," she said. "I found it last week. I think it's broken." I took it from her carefully. The old film camera was heavy, rusted at the edges. "He used to take photos?" He did, she said, then hesitated. Mostly of things he never developed. There was a long pause after that, the kind that felt like it could turn into a confession if I said the wrong word. I didn't. I just set the camera on the bench and began to take it apart, listening to the faint drip of water from her umbrella stand. She leaned against the counter, watching me work. I could feel her gaze, steady but far away, like she was looking through me to something else entirely. "You're good with your hands," she said after a while. I almost laughed, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Not flirtatious, not admiring, just honest, maybe even wistful. "It's not really skill," I said. "Just patience." "That's rarer," she murmured. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. I could hear the rain softening outside, the faint tick of the clock I'd left half fixed on the shelf. I caught her reflection in the small mirror above the bench, the way she brushed her thumb over her wrist, absently tracing the faint line of a scar. I wanted to ask what happened. I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Do you want to learn how to do this?" Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Fix things. Yeah, it's not hard. You just have to be okay with breaking them worse before they get better." She smiled then, a small, fleeting curve that made the corner of her eyes soften. "That sounds familiar." I showed her how to open the back of the camera, how to find the tiny spring that had rusted shut. Our hands brushed once. Accidental, quick, but it felt like it lasted longer than it should have. She froze, then drew her hand back, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear that didn't need fixing. "Sorry," she said. "For what?" "For forgetting where I am." I wanted to ask where she thought she was, but she was already looking at the floor, her voice turning quiet again. "You shouldn't look at me like you do," she said. I tried to smile, to play it off, but my throat felt tight. "How do I look at you?" "Like you see something worth saving." She said it gently, not accusingly, not even sadly, just as if she knew that someday it would hurt us both. And before I could say anything, she lifted the camera, now fixed and clicking softly again, and whispered, almost to herself, "It still works." Then she left, leaving behind that faint smell of rain and the feeling that something in me had just begun to break open. It was late again, the kind of late when even the air feels tired. The storm outside had grown meaner, rattling the metal sign above the door. I'd stayed to finish some last-minute repairs, but really, I was waiting. I didn't tell myself that out loud. When the knock came, it wasn't the front door, it was the side one, the one only people who knew the place used. I opened it, and there she was, her hair damp, eyes bright in that half-light. She looked unguarded. "Sorry," she said, breathless. "The lights in my apartment went out again. I thought, maybe you'd still be here." "I usually am." She smiled faintly, stepping inside. Her coat was soaked, so I handed her a towel. She took it, fingers brushing mine, just a second too long to be casual. I made coffee, the instant kind that tasted like burnt air, while she stood near the heater, rubbing warmth back into her hands. The storm cracked outside, a quick flash through the windows. The shop smelled of rain and machine oil, the quiet kind of intimacy that doesn't need words. "Do you ever get tired of fixing things?" she asked suddenly. "Only when they break again," I said. Her laugh was soft, distant. "That's life, isn't it?" I didn't answer. She sat on the edge of the workbench, close enough that I could see the faint crease near her mouth, the kind that appears from years of trying not to say too much. For a while, we just listened to the rain. I wanted to tell her something, anything, about how I stayed because the shop felt less empty when she was here. But words like that didn't belong in the air between us. Instead, I said, "You don't sleep much, do you?" Her eyes flicked to mine, surprised. "How would you know that? You look like someone who thinks when the world's quiet." That earned me a long pause. She looked down at her hands. "My ex used to say that too," she said, almost whispering, but not like a compliment. I didn't know what to say, so I reached for my cup instead. The warmth steadied me. Her phone buzzed then, sharp in the silence. She looked at it, didn't answer, just stared until the light faded. "He calls sometimes," she murmured. "Not because he misses me. Just to make sure I haven't disappeared." The words hit something raw in me. I wanted to ask if she was okay. I wanted to say he didn't deserve to know if she disappeared. But I just nodded, because sometimes the wrong kind of comfort ruins everything. She stood then, stepping closer to place her empty cup beside mine. Our shoulders almost touched, almost. I could feel the warmth radiating off her, the faint scent of her rain-wet hair. When she turned, her face was inches from mine. We both froze. The storm's thunder rolled low, like the world had gone quiet just to see what we'd do. Her breath trembled. "You should lock up soon," she said. "I will," I whispered. But neither of us moved. Her eyes softened, searching mine for something I couldn't hide. Then, with that same careful restraint she always carried, she stepped back, just enough. The door closed behind her, and the sound of rain rushed in to fill the space she left behind. I stood there, hands still around my cup, heat fading, wondering what might have happened if she'd stayed 1 second longer. The next week, she didn't come. Not Monday. Not Thursday. The bench stayed empty, the air too still. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. People get busy, things happen, but every time the bell over the door rang, my heart betrayed me before my face could. She finally appeared on a Friday evening, just before closing. The world outside was orange and quiet, the kind of dusk that makes everything look like memory. She looked tired. Not physically, deeper than that. "You're still here," she said softly, like it surprised her. "I'm always here," I replied. "It's kind of my thing." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She walked around the counter and stood beside the table where I'd been working. The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It was full, heavy, waiting for something neither of us wanted to name. "Are you okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her hand brushed the surface of the table, fingertips grazing the sawdust. "You shouldn't ask me that," she said. "You don't want the real answer. Try me." That made her look up, and for the first time, I saw fear there, not of me, but of herself. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said quietly. "I come here, I talk to you, I stay longer than I should. And when I leave, I already want to come back." The words hit like a confession whispered to the wrong person. She took a breath, then shook her head, almost angry with herself. "You make me forget how old I am." I didn't know whether to apologize or to thank her. My chest felt too tight for either. "I don't want you to forget," I said. "I just want you to stop pretending it matters." That broke something open in her. She looked away, biting her lip, trying to swallow whatever rose up next. "You don't understand. You're young. You think connection is a door you can just walk through. And you think it's something you have to keep locked," I said, softer than I meant to. The clock above us ticked once, twice. I could hear her breathing, shallow, uneven. She turned toward me then, eyes sharp, voice trembling between anger and something else entirely. "What are we doing?" she asked. Not like a question she wanted answered, but like one that had been waiting in her chest for too long. I could have said 100 things. That I didn't know, that I didn't care, that I'd stop if she asked. But all I managed was, "We're just trying not to mean it." Her shoulders dropped, the fight gone. "You don't know how hard that is for me," she whispered. "I think I do." We stood there, no distance, no movement, just the quiet hum of the world trying to keep us apart. Her eyes glistened in the fading light. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but couldn't trust herself to. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely more than air. "You make it too easy to remember what I promised myself I'd never want again." The next time I saw her, it was by accident. I'd gone to deliver a repaired wall clock to a nearby apartment complex, the kind with hallways that all smelled faintly of rain and detergent. And there she was, sitting on the front steps, hair tied back, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. She looked up when she heard me, startled, like I'd caught her somewhere she wasn't supposed to exist. "I didn't expect," I started. "Neither did I," she said quickly, standing. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. "You're doing deliveries now?" "Helping out," I said, trying to keep busy. The silence that followed felt fragile. Then she sighed, her shoulders dropping just a little. "You might as well come in. No sense standing in the rain." Her apartment was small, neat, too neat, like she'd organized it to keep her thoughts from spilling out. There was music playing low somewhere, a scratchy vinyl that looped at the same crack every few seconds. I set the clock on her table. That's when I noticed it, A photograph in a thin frame, half hidden behind a stack of unopened mail. It was old, the colors faded. A man in his 30s, smiling at the camera, one arm around her younger self. She saw me looking. He died 7 years ago, she said before I could ask. My husband. I turned toward her. She wasn't crying, not even close. Just still. I'm sorry, I said. She shook her head. Don't be. Grief gets quieter. It just hides better. I wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. I just nodded, eyes dropping to the photo again. There was something strange about it. The man's expression. Calm, kind, familiar. Then it hit me. Not a resemblance, but a rhythm. The way he smiled. The way his hand rested on her shoulder. I didn't look like him, but I felt like him. The quietness, the way we both seemed to lean toward her without realizing it. She must have seen it on my face because she said, almost defensively, "You remind me of him." That's all. That's not all, I said before I could stop myself. Her breath caught, not sharply, just a small, wounded sound that made my stomach twist. You shouldn't say things like that, she whispered. You don't know what it does. I didn't mean, yes, you did. Her voice trembled. And maybe that's the problem. For a moment, we both just stood there. The tick of the repaired clock the only sound between us. I wanted to walk closer, to say something that could unmake what had just settled between us. But she turned away first, her hand brushing over the framed photo like she was apologizing to it. I thought I'd stopped waiting for anyone to look at me that way again, she said quietly. Then you came along, and I realized I hadn't. The storm outside had eased, but I barely noticed. I just stood there, heart unsteady, realizing that what she'd just given me wasn't a confession, it was a warning. When I finally left, I looked back through the window once. She was still standing where I'd left her, one hand on the photo, the other pressed against her chest, as if she wasn't sure which one belonged to the past anymore. It happened on an ordinary evening. No rain, no storm, no accident to force it. Just quiet. The kind that sneaks in when you've run out of reasons to pretend you're fine. I was closing up the shop when she came by. She didn't knock this time. Just pushed the door open, her silhouette framed in the fading gold of streetlight. She looked lighter somehow. Tired still, but no longer fighting it. I was walking, she said. And somehow, I ended up here. Guess the universe is out of subtle ways to make a point, I said, half smiling. She smiled too, faintly, then stepped inside. The air between us had changed, calmer, stripped of the tension that used to hum underneath everything. It wasn't gone, it had just settled into something quieter. I've been thinking, she said, running her fingers along the workbench. About what I said before. About you reminding me of him. I nodded, not sure if I wanted her to finish. I was wrong, she continued. You don't. You remind me of who I was before him. The part of me that still believed in small things, in sitting still, in being seen. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until she looked up at me. There was no distance left in her eyes, no guardedness. Just truth, soft, unadorned, and a little painful. I didn't come here to fix anything tonight, she said. I just wanted to be where I don't have to hide. I stepped closer, not enough to touch her, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. You don't have to, I said quietly. Not here. We stood there in that small shop that had somehow become the only place that felt real. I could hear the tick of the repaired clock on the shelf, steady, unhurried. Her hand moved first, reaching for the radio I'd fixed months ago, the one that started all of this. She turned the dial, and a soft, grainy song filled the air. The sound was imperfect, fading in and out, but she smiled like it was enough. I used to dance to this, she said, when no one was home. I didn't say anything, just offered my hand, not asking, not expecting. She looked at it for a long moment, then placed hers in mine. Her skin was cool, her fingers trembling just slightly. We didn't dance. We didn't move at all. We just stood there, hand in hand, letting the song fade between us. There was no confession, no promise, just the quiet understanding that we'd already said everything that mattered without words. After a while, she leaned her forehead against mine, a small, exhausted gesture that felt like both surrender and peace. I don't know what happens after this, she whispered. Neither do I said. But we don't have to fix it right now. The clock ticked once more, steady as breath. And in that stillness, something inside both of us stopped reaching. As if finally, for the first time, it didn't need to. It's strange how something that felt so impossible can now live so quietly in memory, like a room you once knew by heart, but haven't entered in years. It's been months since that night. The shop's still the same flickering light above the bench, same smell of oil and dust. But I'm not. Elena doesn't come by much anymore. She moved to another part of the city, said she needed a change of view, somewhere with light that hit her windows earlier in the morning. We still talk sometimes. Short messages, mostly about small things, a broken lamp she found at a market, a new book she's reading, a song that reminds her of static on the radio. I used to think what we had needed to become something, that it needed a name, or a reason, or some grand resolution. But it didn't. It was enough that it was. There was no goodbye, not really. Just a day when she stopped by one last time, standing where she always did, eyes softer than they'd ever been. She handed me a small envelope with my name written in that careful handwriting of hers. Inside was a photograph, the old radio I'd fixed, sitting on her kitchen counter, sunlight falling across it. On the back, she'd written, "Not everything we repair needs to work forever." I remember laughing when I read it, though my throat hurt after. Because she was right. Some things aren't meant to be permanent. They're meant to remind us that we're still capable of care, still able to feel without breaking. Since then, I've noticed the way the world slows down in small moments. The way people hesitate before speaking. The way silence can hold entire conversations. She taught me that love isn't always a beginning. Sometimes it's just the moment two people stop pretending they're fine. I think about her often, but not with ache anymore. More like a quiet warmth that finds me in the middle of ordinary days, fixing a watch, wiping down the counter, hearing an old song hum through static. It's not loss. It's something gentler. People ask sometimes, customers, friends, if I'm seeing anyone. I tell them no, but I don't say it like I used to. There's no emptiness in it, just space. Space that feels earned. I don't know if I'll see her again. Maybe someday, when she's passing by and the doorbell chimes the same familiar sound, and I'll look up to find her there, smiling that small, careful smile. Or maybe not. Either way, I think I'll be okay. Because what she gave me wasn't a love story. It was proof that connection, real connection, doesn't always have to end with forever. Sometimes it ends with understanding. And maybe that's enough. If you've ever met someone who changed you quietly, not through promises, but through presence, tell me about them. Or just keep them close for a moment while you listen to this. Because that's where stories like ours live, in the space between what was said and what was simply felt.